Welcome to the Summer of Good series. I'm your host, Tim Nash. I'm on paternity leave this summer, so I've pre-recorded these interviews to highlight great organizations that are making our world a better place with sustainable finance. New episodes drop every 2 weeks until the end of August. Enjoy the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to the show. So happy you could join us today. I've got Tonya Surman, CEO of CSI, the Center for Social Innovation, and Kyle Shantz, who is Managing Director at CSI. Thank you so much for joining me today.
So happy to be here, Tim.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller, Tim. Real honor to be here.
Happy to have you on. Now, I've been a fan of CSI. I think I've been a member, I want to say it's been like 15 years or so since I joined CSI as a member. So I have a very intimate knowledge of the Center for Social Innovation. But for listeners who have never heard of CSI or been to CSI, Tonya, can you give us the quick little elevator pitch for CSI?
Absolutely. So the Center for Social Innovation is a nonprofit social enterprise that first started as a co-working space, the first co-working space in Canada 20 plus years ago. But very, very quickly, co-working just became the platform. And what we've really been focusing on is building community and accelerating social enterprises, hundreds of them. So over the last 20 years, we've had over 6,000 organizations that have been members of CSI, and we've provided direct support to over 750 social enterprises, for-profit, non-profit, people still figuring it all out. But ultimately, we've been a community and a hub for people who are trying to change the world. Thus, my shirt.
And for podcast listeners, it says people and planet first. A wonderful, wonderful sweatshirt there. And now y'all have done a number of community bonds over the years. We'll get into that, but there is an offering right now. So I do want to highlight that right off the top of the bat. Kyle, I want you to double check my numbers on me here. My understanding is that there are 3 series for the current community bond, that at a $1,000 minimum, it's locked in for 3 years and paying 4.25%. Do I have that right?
That's right.
And then there's also a $5,000 minimum for 5-year term at 5%. Is that right?
That's correct.
And for people with those deep pockets, we've got, if you've got more than $25,000, you can buy a 5-year bond at 6%. And that 6% is like pretty gosh darn attractive, I got to say. I usually don't see interest rates that high. CSI like literally kind of like invented the community bond back in 2010. I say that you kind of like wrote the playbook on community bond, because there is actually a playbook that you wrote when you first managed to pull this off, that you raised $2 million to purchase a building in downtown Toronto.
Right.
You know, Tonya, you've got this idea of transforming a nonprofit's social capital into financial capital. Can you tell us a little bit about that first community bond that you offered?
For sure. So, the Center for Social Innovation, because we're co-working as our sort of core business, we need real estate. And we had been in operation for about 6 years, and we had a scalable business, right? We were a mecca at that moment when cell phones and laptops emerged and co-working emerged, and we were looking to build and expand our ability to support people who are working to change the world. So, the question became, how does a little nonprofit organization with like a budget of $500,000 a year, how do we buy a building? And so I called the bank and I said, I'd like to buy this beautiful building we found at Bathurst and Bloor, 720 Bathurst. And they literally hung up on me within about 10 minutes. They're like, what kind of assets do you have? Who are you? What do you? And I was like, oh, well, I said, I've got desks. And they're like, yeah, I don't think that's really, a desk, and I got this really neat telephone system. Everybody was like, yeah, that's ridiculous. So we really got turned down by the kind of mainstream financial institutions. And so I went to my advisors, and folks like Brian Eiler and Scott Hughes and Beth Coates with the Community Alternative Investment Cooperative. And they said, you might consider going to the city and seeing if you could get a loan guarantee, because I had my eye on this beautiful building, 36,000 square feet. It was It was on sale. It was that the price was about, I think it was like just under 5 million. And I was like, how do I do this? And Beth Coates said, go to the city and see if they'll give you a loan guarantee. So I go to the city and I asked former director of economic development, Mike Williams, I said, Mike, will you give me a loan guarantee? And he goes, do we do that? I said, actually you do. And actually the city was instrumental in giving us the security to then be able to secure a mortgage from the credit union. And this was like an amazing moment. So the first piece was the loan guarantee. The second piece was the mortgage. And with the loan guarantee, they would give us 75% of the projected value of the building, which means we had to get an appraisal. And we were able to raise up to an additional $2 million of our own money. And the question was, how do you do it? Like, where does this little nonprofit, with a great idea and chutzpah, how do we raise this additional money? And this is where I thought to myself, well, we don't have cash, but we have relationships. Amazing, amazing relationships. And so the Scott Hughes, Brian Eiler, and I came together and really started to kind of evolve this idea of like, could we create a community bond? And it's a simple concept. It's a security it's a loan. It's a loan. It's an interest-bearing loan that's secured against the value of the building. Really simple. And so very, very quickly, I started knocking on every door I could possibly find and riding my bike all over to these different financiers and foundations and anybody I knew who might have money. And, like people, we were able to secure with incredible 100% support of our board of directors and a number of key leaders in the field. So Bill Young was our first in foundation investor. And once he came in and he kind of put in a price, it sort of set the ground for other foundations to come in, other individuals to come in. And we were able to raise $1.4 million just in time so that the loan guarantee was approved by the city. The 1.4 million, I'm riding my bike around collecting checks. They all go into the bank to close on exactly that one day. It was so stressful, never been done before, but it was so fun. And then we had another 8 months to then sell the community bond, the balance, the 600,000 a little bit later, so that we had the financing in order to do the changes to the building that we wanted. So we did it. And it was kind of as much a shock for us as it was for anybody else. It was like, holy mackerel, this is cool. And I got to tell you, it took me longer to write the book, literally the community bond playbook. It took me longer to write the book than it did to raise the money. Right. But it was really exciting. And then watching as we started to see other folks replicating the model, right? So Brian had been involved with lots of other folks as well and was sort of readying them. And you see that with Solar Share and then Trek, and then ultimately some of the exciting work that Tapestry has been able to help us with over the years and their involvement in the bonds.
So here we are 15 years later, and some of those original bonds just renewed this month. And of the Series B bonds, 5 out of 5 of those first investors who took a chance on us, all five of them renewed for another 5 years. So they were apparently very happy with what they had done with their community bond.
Yeah, we're so excited, like to be able to make a 15-year commitment. Like they rode with us that whole time. We never missed a single payment. We've always been 100% unlocked by it, right? Like just think about what that money did. It's phenomenal. The loan guarantee, the raising the money, and then that inspired the replication of the model over and over again, the purchase of now 2 buildings, and then ultimately watching as other organizations across the province, across the country are doing this. Like look at what leadership looks like. Yay.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, I had a front row seat for a big chunk of that, got to watch you do it, explaining to a lot of people, like, what is a bond, and then what is a community bond? And then how the heck does this work? And it just opened up so many different opportunities and possibilities within the nonprofit sector.
It is incredible. As we all know, nonprofits and charities can issue shares. They don't have access to the same equity tools that for-profits have. And so these big infrastructure projects have been largely out of reach of the whole impact sector for so long. And so the bond, we can't really overstate how transformative it is for the social sector. People are are often very willing to make donations, but donations can be 1,000 or 5,000 or something like that. With bonds, they're willing to kind of go all in because they know that they're going to get their money back, and that gives us this access to capital that we never previously had. So it's transformative.
I love it. And I refer to it as recyclable philanthropy. Instead of giving money one time and it's a one-time donation, and then, next year I have to give that same amount. Otherwise, the organization, could be in a budget shortfall. Instead, this is a way, like you said, not only can I invest, but at the end of the term, I then have the opportunity to reinvest, to kind of keep recycling that same dollar to be able to have that impact. So it really is transformative, and it's been so cool to see the evolution of the ecosystem.
And one thing, Tim, that I want to add to this is, we've now done it, and you'll talk about this about several times now. We've raised more capital to raise now 2 buildings, and we've done renewals, and there's been a number of raises. And what's very cool is 2 things. One is who invests, and the unlocking of the foundation's capital from their capital funds, not their granting funds. And I have to tell you, it changes the power dynamic. Right? Like it actually fundamentally changes the power. We're not just recycling philanthropy. We're building a circular economy. And the moment when I literally wrote a check to a foundation and handed the envelope with their interest payment to the foundation president, and he looked at me bewildered. And I was like,
yeah,
this is how things can work. Mm-hmm. And it was like such an interesting moment. I'd be like, wow, we're actually building an economy that is redesigning power relationships. Now that's cool.
No question. With sustainable finance, I talk a lot about sort of doing less evil versus doing more good. And, for a lot of folks, seeing the impact of these impact investments of community bonds, it's so heartwarming. But it's also then, to your point, it's great whenever I get the interest payment that shows up, and I get the little line item like, oh, CSI paid my interest on community bond. It always feels so good. And let's get to the raises, because you did that first $2 million raise in 2010. My understanding is, I want to say it was 2014, a raise of 4.3 million to be able to buy the second location.
192 Spadina.
That's it. Now you're raising $6 million with this one. So this will be the biggest one yet. What's this money for?
We're going to buy the mortgage, and we're going to be 100% community owned.
Amazing.
It's so cool. It's so cool. It's like, life is just like, we can get money from lots of different places, but why not actually create opportunities for people to invest? So that's kind of like, we're really trying to shift the game on how it all works. CSI has had a really difficult run since COVID. We've been very public and very transparent about how to make it all work from home, completely shifted things, interest rates shifted things, massive shifts in almost every single system. But I have to say, CSI has worked so diligently. The team, the board, our leadership has just been fully focused on how to get CSI restructured for the future. And I'm here to say we are ecstatic about our ability to survive this craziness, because it has been, but also to be, I think we're going to be that much stronger and more resilient going forward. And this is all because of the human support and the values support that is embodied in an investment like the community bond.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to talk about circularity, returning the interest payments to the members who are there paying their rent. It's just like Tonya was saying with the foundations, they give us a rent check and then we give them an interest payment check, and it all kind of stays in the same ecosystem. So it's really, really great.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. One thing I'd love to dive deeper on, Kyle, maybe you can help me with this, is, we've talked a little bit about this notion of a capital stack. Like when you say that you're sort of buying out the mortgage, I think for a lot of folks, and a lot of nonprofits, when they approach this, it's important to understand that community bonds typically aren't the only source of debt or financing. So can you explain this idea of a capital stack and sort of where community bonds fall into that. And I think that'll really help us understand why it's such a big deal that now, it is going to be fully community financed.
My understanding is when we bought CSI Annex, we had a mortgage. We needed the bonds to do a lot of renovations. And so especially initially, the combination of that stack, that first mortgage plus the bonds on top, was actually more than the value of the building. We were 110, 120% loan to value on that initial infrastructure purchase. Over the years, we've paid off bonds, we've paid off mortgage, property values have gone up, and we've seen that loan to value shrink. During the last raise that we did, we were around 50% loan to value. We're projecting with this raise, if all goes according to plan, we'll have enough money to take out the entire first mortgage. And we've had a wonderful partner in VCIB, absolutely transformational for us also, being able to access their capital initially. But I think we're ready to go.
Van City Community Investment Bank. Do I have that right?
That's correct. And yeah, again, they're the best partner in the entire world. So if anybody out there is still in a place where they want a first mortgage, call them up. But yeah, I think we're going to be in a position where if this raise goes according to plan, we'll have enough in community bonds to pay that whole thing out. That will move our bonds into first position. So they'll be the only financing on the building. And all of the interest payments we make will be to members of our own community, which is going to be, wonderful after 20 years.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome.
It's very cool, eh?
It is.
It is really cool. It's like, oh, here, let's mess with capitalism a little bit. Let's just change the assumptions. What if community actually owned those assets that we use? It's phenomenal.
It's incredible. And I love seeing other organizations, having that inspiration and doing it. Something that comes to mind for me right now is Hughes Room, just use this model to be able, this is an incredible music venue. I really feel like talk about industries affected by COVID, like the art sector and live music. And, it's just become so hard. And so, to be able to have a community space that is owned by the community, it just really is. There's so many different examples for this. And I'm seeing so many more examples. Like part of what I'm doing this summer with these episodes is being able to highlight other community bond projects and other examples. And so, as a group that's done this, several times now, really curious to hear from you. How has it evolved since your first raise? What are some of the lessons learned, some of the wisdom that you could pass on to some of these organizations that might be doing their very first community bond?
Yeah, well, so I thank you for that, Tim. And so this is where I get less enthusiastic and more like serious business, Tonya. Legit. So I'm also a very proud bond investor in Hughes Room. And I also have the solar bond. So I guess it's the biogas bond, the Zoo share, which has struggled, right? And we've seen struggles. And I want to say, it's very, very important that people understand that the reason that we have a successful bond is because we have a successful business. And I cannot express enough, this is not a fundraising strategy. This is a business tool. And it means you have to be generating revenue. And it's the thing that comes back over and over again. Does your initiative, is it functioning as an enterprise? Is it generating revenue regularly, predictably, profitably? Because we can get into all sorts, and we've been there in terms of DSCR and meeting expectations around this and around that. And this is where we get into trouble. This is where these opportunities get into trouble. So, I can't stress enough how incredibly important it is that you are realistic about what kind of revenue you will actually be able to generate, because if you're not generating the revenue, then you're not able to generate the returns. And if you're not doing that, then you're not meeting the obligations of the bond. So that's my stern lady voice, but it's really, really, really important. I think another really key lesson that I found, and I'm not sure how it plays out still, Kyle might know, but we might not even know this, is at least initially, it was really interesting to see who was investing, right? In the original bond, it was pretty hard. The foundations have become, I think, really uptight. Forgive me, but I do. They're all like, oh, we're getting somebody else to do, they're not as grounded and connected to the investments. And so we've actually had less traction from the the impact investment field, I'm a little disappointed. They've got all these, strict controls. And what I found consistently is that 60-year-old women and over are the best. Like seriously, they're my people. I'm just saying, it's true, but like legit, we had this situation where we did a community bonds party in 2014 when we were trying to raise money, and there were two really key audiences that were so amazing. One was new Canadians. We had so many more new Canadians investing than what you would expect. And the other one was older women. And I think that there's something about having felt alienated from the mainstream investment world that made them go, oh, I get it. It's a building. I'm helping them buy a building. And they could walk into the building. They could have that real lived experience with it. And so we had this one moment where we had a father and a son who are both new to Canada, who showed up at the party, both as investors, and they didn't know that they were investing together. And this was like this beautiful moment of like, oh, daddy did something right because he's got his son and his son. And it was just so neat to see that we were able to tap into non-traditional investors and provide them with something really meaningful.
Yeah, I would say, a few things. One is that, it's called a community bond for a reason. Your biggest supporters are going to be your community. And, a lot of us have come to this sector from other places. I myself worked at a bank for 10 years. I can't tell you how commodified financial products are. Obviously, with banks, you're out there and you're like, my rate is 3.4, mine is 3.45. And, they're just commodities, right? And you're out in the market fighting over, 1 basis point. With community bonds, it's not like that. Every project is unique. Every project has its own purpose. It appeals to people and, whatever their values are, whatever they're trying to achieve in the world and the things that they want to support. So that's really nice to be freed from, the commodification of bonds. And then the second thing, I guess, would be pricing. And this is something that I think a lot of new issuers struggle with. And, Tim, you're an economist. You know how complicated interest rates can be. They change all the time. And, if you're not, I think if you're not looking at it through the lens of somebody who is like, this is the price for this bond, and it has to be competitive. So at CSI, we are a big fan of shared value when it comes to pricing. For example, this bond, as you commented, the top tier rate is 6%. That's a good rate. That's a great rate. You don't see that out there. We went through every impact investment that we could find. We went through all of the GICs that we could find. We try to find this balance of safety and impact. And then we say, like, if we were going to keep our first mortgage would be at 6.5%. And so, instead of that, why don't we share some value here? We'll pay the highest rate that we can. That's less than what we would pay from the bank. And then, everybody wins. We get a bit of a lower rate, and our investors get a much higher rate than they would get from that same bank out of a GIC or something like that.
And I think it's also important that we are trying to appeal, again, despite my some of the challenges that we've had with the sort of broader investment world, we are actually trying to create a product and a viable option. And we are trying to give opportunity for foundations and impact investors who are looking for a more scaled approach to be able to balance their portfolios. And so being able to offer a really decent return allows them to also be able to bring something that is a little bit more tried and true, a little bit more less experimental than some of the other investments that they're getting into. So, we're looking to bring in and invite in a range of different players. And really the invitation is like, impact investing and community bonds are viable options. Despite some really big challenges that we faced, especially over the last 5 years, we're still a going concern, and we're still a viable investment, and we still have an excellent opportunity at a really, really solid rate. And so, for us, it's been as much about being able to prove that we can do capitalism a little differently as it is about the raise per se. It's ultimately, we've consistently made sure that there was a place for community bond investors to be able to invest even if we could have had money cheaper from other places, because this is about expanding the field and about expanding the opportunities for people to feel involved in the change work through this vehicle.
Well, let's talk about the ecosystem for a minute, because my goodness, how much has the impact investment ecosystem grown over the last sort of 15 years or so? Like, it's incredible to think sort of where we were and where we are now. At the same time, it's like we still have so far to go. Like, I feel like through one lens we've come a long way. On the other lens, like, I feel like we've been kind of dragging people along a little bit, that it hasn't grown quite as quickly as I certainly would have loved. But there is an interesting opportunity right now. We've got a new prime minister. Mark Carney is prime minister. This guy understands sustainable finance. I'm asking guests to sort of, what is your policy wish to help grow the impact investment ecosystem? If you could sort of be a little angel on Mark Carney's shoulder, whispering into his ear, what would you say? Tonya?
Oh, it's a hard question, Tim. I've been working in the social enterprise, social finance field for 21 years now, and I can say to you that I feel like government has dragged its feet and has been of very little help to CSI's journey. And I wish that weren't true. It's been a hard run without access to any kind of investing over the last 15 years. I think the city of Toronto has been one of our greatest supporters. They were the ones really grounded, locally based government who was willing to and has consistently been willing to step up and step in. The loan guarantee was essential. I highly recommend it. I think it's an important part of the equation. I think that there's lots of different work that we've done over the years around leveling the playing field and not always making incentives available to the for-profit sector, but not available to the nonprofit sector. I find that infuriating. Just because we're registered as a nonprofit doesn't mean that we don't run a viable business. The only difference is that we actually reinvest in our community instead of having somebody go buy a boat with it. So there's a lot of problems in terms of policy. The community bond and investing in CSI is the best Canadian investment you could ever make. And if we want to buy Canadian, support local, support Canadian, this is one of the very, very important ways that we can do that. So let's take a look at how we become aligned in the nonprofit sector as viable options for our buy Canadian efforts and all of that kind of work. We had the social finance fund. That money was allocated, I think you'll correct me, Tim, but over 5, maybe 7 years ago now. When did we start that?
Quite a while ago.
And I am still waiting to see how that goes. So I'm hopeful. But I really do feel that it's going to be individual decisions in households, individual decisions in foundations, and in the institutions. We have an opportunity to concretely support our country and the work that we do at CSI. When you support the Center for Social Innovation, you're supporting 700 organizations that are doing social purpose work every single day. And so this is leverage, right? This is leverage. So I'm hoping that Mark Carney will see that the social enterprise social finance world is a viable option, that we can be part of the solution, and we need to be treated in ways that we're being treated equally, that there is a level playing field, that we're building a policy environment that isn't exclusionary against the social purpose field, but actually unlocks our work alongside. And so this has been a long journey. As we sort of push for policy, I think we have to really look at the limitations that we put on our charitable sector. We need to look at unlocking huge, huge areas in terms of this opportunity space. And I'm excited. But let's just say the nonprofit sector is a part of this economy. We represent 8% of the gross domestic product. Do not ignore the 2 million people that are employed in this field in our country.
I would just say like something real basic, and that would be the bond. It's still very much the Wild West with community bonds. They're not defined by statute. They're not even defined by trademark. Nobody owns them. They're sort of very much a community product, owned by no one and kind of loosely defined. One of the biggest problems that our investors have is that they want to put these things into their RSPs, into their TIFSAs, into things like this, and they can't, technically, exempt market bonds can go in there, but they walk in with a certificate. The bank looks at them and they're like, I have no idea what this is. No, no, no. And if you're really, really persistent, you can get it in there, but I mean, you have to be really persistent and probably very, very wealthy too. Yeah, we would love to see it's such a tension between like asking for regulation and legitimacy, while also not wanting to over-regulate these things and letting them be what they have emerged organically as. But yeah, some kind of policy that lets financial institutions understand community bonds well enough that we can get them into these registered accounts and really unlock all of that long-term capital.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, I'll be honest, I've stopped trying to get these into registered accounts with clients. Like it's such a pain. You can do it legally, you're allowed to, but the paperwork, the administration, and the fees associated with doing it, it's often, and it has to be a certain amount to make it worthwhile to pay those fees. And the type of person where, if they're going to carve out 10% of their portfolio for community bonds, and they're going to have so much money that you might as well fill it up with other things, for it to be worthwhile. So most of my clients just simply end up holding these things as unregistered. They do pay taxes on it, but it is a giant pain that within the ecosystem.
I'll just say, and it's limiting the size of projects that we can take on, right? The difference between an RSP investment possible versus non, and where that sits is like an order of magnitude. You have to add a zero onto it. So this would be a huge unlock, but it really is a decision that the banks have to make, because we're already legally allowed to hold secure bonds inside RSPs. So this is not the government. The government could put pressure, but it is the banks. And so until we find financial partners that are willing to do this in a scaled way, I got to tell you, there's a business here, my friends. If you're a banker, there's a business.
Yeah, someone who can do it quickly and efficiently and easily. There's definitely a market opportunity there. And really what I took away from your comment, Tonya, is really this notion that with the regulations and sort of at that level, that it is so much easier for individuals to make this decision rather than institutions when it comes to actually opening up your wallet and just doing the thing and investing the money. I find individuals can make it that decision so much faster. So I guess, what I'm hearing is, hey, Mark Carney, like, why don't you buy some community bonds with your own money? Right? Let's get some of these interest payments from CSI going into Mark Carney's, blind trust or whatever. We can see if we can sneak some in there. And then I think that as soon as people start to understand the model, experience the model, you buy one bond, all of a sudden you're much more likely to buy a whole bunch more bonds. Once you've bought more bonds, that's when you really understand the power of this model.
And Tim, I do want to say something, because I was listening to myself earlier going, well, Tonya, don't scare off the foundations. They are and should be a part of this too. And they have access to larger amounts of money than individuals do. So they can be transformative. And so the invitation absolutely is, we absolutely want foundations and institutional investors to come in. And I think what I've felt is that it's becoming that part of the field has gotten itself into a lot of like rules and guidelines and process, and that we have an opportunity to unlock that with something that is a pretty, relatively speaking, we've a pretty good investment that has an amazing track record. We've been doing it for 15 years, and our track record speaks for itself. So please, if you have lots of money, we want you to.
So on that note, that's a great segue. Kyle, how do people get started? If someone wants to buy a CSI community bond, how do they actually do that?
Great. Great question. You can go to our website, socialinnovation.org. It's right there on the front page. You'll see the whole pitch. You'll be able to download our offering statement that was put together by our friend Brian Eiler at Eiler Campbell, a real friend of the nonprofit sector. And then you'll be able to buy the bonds through a portal that is hosted by our friends Tapestry Community Capital. And they are the great infrastructure partner that we have used for many years. Both to sell the bonds and also to issue our tax forms and take care of our clients in a central database. So it's all one-stop shop, socialinnovation.org.
Don't wait. people, like legit. Kyle's getting so good at selling these bonds that the last time he went out, he sold out in 4 days. So we're well on our way to meeting our $6 million target. If you hear this, don't wait, don't think about it. Go to the website right now, because legit, it's gonna sell out, especially at a 6% rate. Like, it's crazy. So yeah, I legit. We've sold out so quickly in the last 2 raises. So come on in, guys, join the community. We want you.
2020, 17 days. And then last year it was, 3 days actually.
Oh,
Not
sorry.
even 4
Sorry.
days. But the good news for everybody is that this is also our largest raise ever. So it will sell fast, but there are lots available. So get in there.
Well, thank you both so much for the awesome work that you're doing. Really appreciate you, and this is such a great opportunity with this community bond, but also for the work that CSI does day in, day out, creating a more sustainable economy here in Toronto, but also as a model that's really been replicated across the country and even around the world. So thank you so much for your leadership and innovation. And
Tim, thank
yeah.
you for your innovation and leadership. I remember when you started Good Investing 15 years, and you were still ideation early stage, and look, you've come so far. Look at the amazing work. I love it. Good for you. Congratulations. And thank you for having us on.
Awesome. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tim. Thanks again.
Such a fun episode. A sincere thank you to our guests. Links we discussed are below. A huge thank you to Yamini Cohen for producing the Summer of Good series and making us all sound great. And to you, thank you so much for listening, for being here, and for sticking around till the end. As I've mentioned, this series was recorded ahead of time while I'm on paternity leave, taking some quiet and probably loud moments with my growing family. But it means a lot to know that these episodes are reaching you while I'm away. If you're looking for support with your sustainable investments, there are still some good ways to stay connected. Want to explore DIY sustainable investing? Join the Good Investing Classroom. You can share your thoughts and questions or check out my courses. I'll be checking in there from time to time this summer, and you'll also have the support of the Good Investing community. If you have no interest in doing it yourself, reach out to Daryl Brown at Genesis Capital Management. He'll look after you and your money. With any luck, I'll be back to one-on-one meetings in September for new and existing DIY clients. Thanks again for being here. It truly means the world. Until next time, take care, and I hope you're having a wonderful summer of good.